How's it going, YouTube? Welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we are covering the hidden interactions you didn't know existed in Branded. All the really unique lines you see good players do and how to accomplish them yourselves. Before we begin, like the video, subscribe for more content like this for the Legacy of Destruction Nationals competitive season. We're going to start off with Alba-Lenatus, which is a card that I've covered a lot on my Twitter recently because I've been testing a lot and playing it because it's just good against the meta. Now, contact fusing is a concept that not a lot of people know because the last time this was a thing was around Cyber Dragon format, which was years and years ago, and how that actually works. So, what you got to know about Alba-Lenatus is that, first of all, it cannot be used as a fusion material, so don't get scammed. Also, don't scam your opponent because you can't use this as material for like Branded in Red and Cartesia and stuff like that. The second thing is that it needs Fallen of Albaz and one or more dragon monsters. It can use multiple dragon monsters, and it must be either fusion summoned with something like Lubellion or directly from the deck with Branded Fusion, or by special summoning it by sending the above cards from any monster zone to the graveyard, which means you can fuse with your opponent's monsters. Now, how do you actually achieve this? You just need an Albaz on board, and if there's no response from your opponent and priority is back to you, you just send all the cards that you want as fusion material. You don't use poly, you don't need any other spell, and you summon the Alba-Lenatus. This is how contact fusing works. This is why it's called contact, right? You just like swipe everything from the field and just send it to the graveyard. Now, another thing that I want to mention with this interaction specifically is that some people don't actually know. Besides this, of course, you have Albion the Shrouded Dragon and even Albaz the Ashen and Bestial Eluber that are all named Fallen of Albaz. You can use those from the field as well. But another thing that is worth mentioning here is that you can fuse with your own face down fusion materials. So when it comes to linking, synchro summoning, Xyz summoning, you cannot use face down cards because they need to confirm a level, they need to confirm a type, but fusing doesn't work that way just because Konami said so. So when it comes to cards like Book of Eclipse or Daruma, if you want to fuse with your cards, you can still use any face down cards, right? If I had Polymerization and I had this, I can fuse this when it's face down. And also, it's worth mentioning that when you want to contact fuse with your opponent, it's sometimes just easier and a bit more cautious. You can just set the Albaz and then send everything from the field. So just make sure you know that. So another popular card when you're going to go against the Snake Eye deck, probably, but other decks can run this too, is Zealantis. Zealantis, what it does is that it has an effect during your opponent's turn where it can just blink out all of the monsters from the field and return them, right? So it banishes everything, every monster, and then your opponent can summon back the monsters in whichever position they want. Now, there is a cool interaction with Queritus here that if you use Queritus to summon Despian, if you use Granguignol to summon Despian Queritus, this card is not properly summoned. Properly summoning means that you summon the card by the type of fusion, Xyz summon, synchro summon, link summon that it requires, right? Using polymerization, using a card that actually fusion summons. This is special summoned, so if it goes to the graveyard, you cannot even Monster Reborn it. It just goes away forever because it was cheated out of the extra deck. Now, what's cool about Zealantis here is that Zealantis will activate the effect if you control Queritus that actually was summoned by Granguignol. It cannot be special summoned back to the field because Zealantis special summons. Okay? So the opponent special summons back the monsters, but Queritus cannot summon. And since it was removed from the field by an opponent's card effect, you can actually declare it and it doesn't come back. You can summon an Albaz and you can, if you want, in this scenario, usually they will just go for an OTK, right? So they won't usually have interruptions. Their Promethean Princess is going to be used up. And just make sure you remember that because it's very easy to forget and your opponent might not know this as well. And it's super helpful to just like close games. If they go for an OTK, they waste all their resources and you just brought on a Mirror Jade and took down one of their bodies, which is great. Just remember to make sure to not do this in the battle phase. Now, Branded in High Spirits is a card that is gaining a lot of attention and traction because it's just an amazing card that pluses you so much. There's a really critical interaction with this card. First of all, because it's a quick play, it's just more versatile than anything else. If you by any chance don't know what it does, you can reveal a monster in your hand and one level fusion monster of the same type that has 2500 attack or defense, and you can just send it to the graveyard, or if you want, you can also discard the revealed monster and add a Fallen of Alba's card from the deck. So a really cool thing that you can do is, since Albion is cost, you activate it from the hand. So you activate the Albion here, you send whatever you want, free setup in the graveyard, right? And then you go ahead and chain, right? This is activated. You place it usually here. You chain High Spirits here. Now, you get the cost for free, but then you can send the Albion here, send anything else that corresponds that in terms of type, and just add anything, right? Just add any Fallen of Alba's card. So now, this High Spirits and the Albion gets you 3 setup cards for your combo, right? Now, in this case, you can special summon Cartesia now. During the end phase here, you're going to get a Quem. You could also grab a Quem here to special summon, to just normal summon itself, send something like Branded Fusion here, and this Retribution that you already sent with Albion, you can grab it back to the hand. This is extremely, extremely versatile. Now, when it comes to Albion specifically, you can do the exact same thing with Branded Opening, right? If you want to get Graveyard setup, right? You activate Albion, send Retribution, chain Opening, send it to the graveyard, summon a Quem here. This deck looks weird because it's for the video. And then this again sends Branded Fusion from the deck, banish, get to hand, just searches for Branded Fusion, which is really, really cool. A lot of recent builds have been playing Allure of Darkness just because it's so good in Branded, with cards like Tragedy and Mercurier that can plus you off when you banish them, and also drawing to a card just really, really strong. Now, a very cool interaction that you can do here is activate Allure of Darkness, and if your opponent doesn't respond with anything, chains Ash or negates it by any means, you can chain Branded Opening here, discarding an extra card from the hand. Now, Branded Opening doesn't only summon, it also searches. So you can add to the hand, right? Take 1 Despia, add it to the hand, or special summon it in defense, right? You do this, you draw from the Allure, and then you are guaranteed to get an Aluber here, or a Quem, whatever you need. So essentially, this is not wasted. You don't really waste the discard for this. You can always, like, you know, if you already have Tragedy in hand, of course, discard it for opening. But this way, you guarantee that you banish something of value, and from 2 cards, it was basically 3 cards, but from those 3 cards, we got a search and draw 2. We just refreshed our hand with a card that we need, and we can keep playing, which is really, really good. You can basically just search your Quem and Aluber with this combo, and it's really good. So another really popular card in the metagame right now is Fusion Duplication for Branded. It's usually a one-of, right? And you can just play it with Thrust. If your opponent ashes you on your Branded Fusion, you can search this, set it from the deck, because your opponent usually won't control any monsters. So you can't add it to the hand, you just can set it. But this is such a high value card that, if you're obviously probably aware of this, but this card is great. So obviously play it. But some of the hidden, less known interactions, obviously activate Fusion Deployment, target Branded Fusion, banish it, copy the effect, right? 2 things that you need to remember. If you already have setup and have this in hand, sometimes you're not going to need it to activate another Branded Fusion, right? This can also copy the effect of Fusion Duplication because it's a fusion spell card, right? So this can act as an interruption to summon either Cartesia or Fallen of Albaz from your deck during your opponent's turn, which is super high value because this can get you to puppet. This can get you to fuse with your opponent's monster into a Mirror Jade when they least expect it, right? And usually, there's barely any interaction with this card. You cannot ash this card, just so you're aware, since it copies the effect. Its effect just copies a card effect. So ash cannot be chained because this effect doesn't include sending cards from the deck. This does, or this, to summon from the deck. Now, another cool thing with Alba-Lenatus, just so you're aware, this card, during the end phase, if it was in the graveyard, because it was sent there this turn, it adds a polymerization or a normal spell fusion spell card. So this is also a normal fusion spell card. You can add this to the hand as follow-up to make sure you get a Cartesia or an Alba summon during the next turn. And one more important thing about fusion duplication, this targets in either player's graveyard. So make sure you remember this, because in the mirror match it's great, and also you can target super polymerization with it because it targets quick play spells as well. Polymerization normal, fusion normal spells, or quick play polymerization spells in either player's graveyard. So if your opponent has a super poly, if they have a branded fusion, if they have fusion duplication, you can deployment, you can copy that as well. Playing versus skill drain. Skill drain is probably going to be one of the cards that you will meet the most now that basically every other floodgate is either banned, like summon limit, or at 1, like anti-spell and rivalry and goes in and there can be only 1. So you're going to probably see this deck a lot. Why do we play Shaddoll Dragon, and how do we actually beat skill drain with this? So one branded fusion basically does it all in a discard. Branded fusion here is going to send Shaddoll Dragon and Fallen of Albaz to summon a Lubellion. Now, what's going to happen here is that Chain 1 is going to be Lubellion, discarding, and Chain Link 2 is going to be Shaddoll Dragon because it's sent to the graveyard by a card effect, target 1 spell or trap on the field and destroy it. You target the skill drain. So it will resolve backwards, meaning that Shaddoll Dragon will resolve, destroying the skill drain, and then Lubellion can now resolve with effect because skill drain is no longer on the field when it resolves. So it just summons whatever you want. You can get a Mirror Jade here. And this is a really cool one card trick to, if you have a way to get to branded fusion in this deck, a lot of times you can just get it from the hand, exactly as you saw with cards like Allure of Darkness, or of course with cards like Albion the Strategy Dragon, dropping it, maybe sending a Serenir to grab Retribution, get it back to the hand, stuff like that. So it's kind of easy to get branded fusion without actually playing through a skill drain, but then this branded fusion can also out the skill drain, which is great. Now, this is not exactly an accurate science that you can pull off consistently, but you're going to be able to reach a point where you can actually puppet lock under Branded Lost using the protection of Branded Lost to make sure your opponent can actually not interrupt you at all. And this is mainly by using Cartesia or fusion duplication with branded fusion. The thing you need to know, and this is an important ruling for Branded Lost. So in order for Branded Lost to protect the fusion summoning window and preventing from your opponent from activating card effect, means that the first chain in the chain before you activate Branded Lost, meaning the last effect that resolves, is an effect that fusion summons, right? So, for example, if I go Chain 1 fusion duplication, target branded fusion, Chain 2 Cartesia, on resolution, I will not be protected by the effect of Branded Lost because the last thing that happened was fusion duplication activating, right? And this just copies an effect. On the other hand, if you activate Cartesia, then chain duplication, what you can do is this. Summon from the deck, for example, let's go with Albaz and Gimmick Puppet Nightmare for a Lubellion, and then Cartesia is going to resolve to summon the Albion here. Now, on resolution, you will have Chain 1, Chain 2, and then the last thing that happened was the fusion summon done by Cartesia. Your opponent cannot activate any cards or effects here. So priority goes back to you, and you can activate Albion the Sanctifier Dragon to summon whatever you want from the graveyard, right? So it's not super easy to do, or sometimes think about the exact line you want to do it in, but this is the way where you can get protection from Branded Lost while also making sure that you puppet lock your opponent. You don't necessarily have to do this way. You can go for the classic, combo in the draw phase while setting up with Granguignol sending this. But you can also not give your opponent any chance to bestial called by droplet you, and just make sure it resolves completely. It just requires a little bit of setup. Now, make sure you use judgment and judge the situation on what happens if something doesn't go through. What happens if my Cartesia gets hit with the droplet, for example? A good player can actually know how to do that. So make sure you don't always lose to the same cards, and make sure you got a good opening window. I don't like to commit to this line if I don't know that I can 100% achieve this. And sometimes you can actually let your opponent play a bit and see what they have and do it mid-combo, and it's good either way. And lastly, one of my favorite cards of the format is obviously Borreload Furious Dragon. Such an incredible card. Requires 2 dark monsters, 2 dark dragon monsters. You usually fuse an Albaz and something like Albion Shrouded or Bestial Serenir. These are mostly what you're going to get, but also like, you know, things like this, or this that are already in the graveyard. So this card is great because each turn you can target one card you control and one card your opponent controls and pop them. That is it. You target one monster you control specifically and one other card your opponent controls. So what you can do, and this is because it says destroy them. If it doesn't say, like for example on Albion the Sanctifier, it says summon 1 to each field, or some cards say summon both or destroy both, for example, then you need to actually destroy both. But since this says destroy them, you can actually, let's say our opponent has an Allure on the field, you can activate Borreload Furious, target itself, and target Allure, and then the effect resolves. Allure gets destroyed, but you can protect with the second effect of Branded Opening. And how you can do that, if a fusion monster or monsters you control would be destroyed by a card effect, and it doesn't have to be your opponent's card effect, you can banish this instead of them being destroyed. So since this card is once per turn, and you can do this every turn, it's sometimes worth it if you don't have any other monsters to destroy to make sure you can protect it for another turn, you get another pop by it, and you know, this also protects from your own card effects. So that's really good. I think this is where we're going to wrap it. Some pointers, not necessarily anything incredibly new, but for some new players and players picking up the deck or trying it for the next national season might help a little bit. Really want to hear from you guys more interactions like this that most people don't know, so we can make another video. This is like what I could think of, and not revealing too much tech choices that I've been playing. Just things that are more publicly available and like nothing super secret. But I would really love to hear in the comments below, what techs are you guys playing right now? What lines are you doing that people aren't aware of? And yeah, like the video, subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.